Now, the latest from ITV News Meridian with Fred Dinage and Sangeeta Barbara.
Good evening, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the south. Jailed the men who posed as policemen to scam elderly victims in Hampshire out of thousands of pounds.
Now even one glass of wine a day is bad for you. The new alcohol guidelines that make sobering reading.
From Steve to Sophie, Bournemouth's Premier League photographer overwhelmed by the support of players and fans.
Unsure what to do with your Christmas tree? Well, how about sprucing up the menu and eating it? Good evening to you. They conned dozens of elderly and vulnerable people in Hampshire out of thousands of pounds. But tonight, the gang behind an elaborate phone scam are behind bars.
The men phoned people in the Alton and Four Marks areas posing as police officers, then tricked victims to hand over their bank details.
They struck just months after serving sentences for a similar fraud. From Winchester Crown Court, Richard Slee sent this.
It was over a 4-day period in August last year that this gang from London targeted elderly people in the Alton and Four Marks area. At least 100 cold calls were made, all to random numbers beginning with 01420. This afternoon, the court heard that Rakeem Worthington, Abdullah Haji and Lugani Armani had impersonated police officers, claiming that their victims' bank accounts had been compromised, before asking for their bank details, including PIN numbers. Just 2 people fell for the scam and withdrew cash from their banks totalling nearly £5,000. The money, along with bank and credit cards, were then collected by a courier who called at their homes. But when the gang tried to con one of the victims a second time, she became suspicious and called the police, who arrested the men when the courier called back. The 81-year-old woman, who doesn't want to be identified, told us she's been very upset by what happened.
Well, I just felt quite sorry for their mothers, that their sons should have embarked on a life of crime at such a young age.
After checking the records of a large number of mobile phones seized from the men, the police identified 13 more potential victims. What can people do to avoid this sort of crime?
People need to make sure that they are speaking to police officers. They need to verify it. If it sounds too good to be true, then it is. Ring up 101, ring 999. If you think you're suspicious, then tell the person to come and see them at their door.
Well, this was the second time this gang has been convicted for this type of phone fraud, sentencing the 3 men to a total of 10 years in a youth offenders institution. Judge Patrick Clarkson said this was a sophisticated, nasty fraud which was nothing less than the cold-blooded victimisation of elderly people. Richard Slee, ITV News, Winchester.
In other news, a man has been arrested on suspicion of murdering a woman at a barber shop in Dorset. Police were called to Jock's Barbers on East Street in Blandford yesterday evening, where they found the body of a 44-year-old woman. A 49-year-old man was arrested at the scene. Police have spent today searching nearby gardens for a knife. The Independent Police Complaints Commission has been informed, as Dorset Police had prior contact with the people involved.
A man's been jailed for at least 17 years for shooting a man through the letterbox of his home in Brighton in a case of mistaken identity. 33-year-old Adam Willis has been found guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy to murder. He went to Elmore Road last January to target a man, but ended up shooting a next-door neighbour who suffered serious injuries but survived.
Babies and toddlers have been left without a classroom after their nursery was broken into for the 4th time in 7 months. Toys were broken and paperwork destroyed at Pixie's Day Nursery in Woolston in Southampton, but the thieves left empty-handed.
They came in through the back door in 2 to 3s, completely breaking the door and straight through to the office, which they've then trashed, obviously looking for some money. In the past they have got money on a break-in right back in May, but this time they haven't got away with anything at all. So they've just completely trashed the office and obviously disrupted the day at Nursery.
AFC Bournemouth's official photographer has become the first transgender woman in UK football.
Yes, Sophie Cook from Brighton was previously known as Steve, a married father of 3. But Sophie says the players and fans have welcomed her transition. Malcolm Shaw now has her quite remarkable story.
My first memory of being transgender was when I was about 7 years old. We went on a family holiday and I spent all week getting the other kids to call me Jenny. And growing up, there was always something that just felt not right.
Now, at the age of 48, Sophie Cook has fully acknowledged that inner voice. She's become the first transgender woman in the world of professional football. Formerly known as Steve, a married father of 3, the official photographer at AFC Bournemouth. As the club were celebrating their promotion to the Premier League, Sophie was preparing to start the new season with a new identity too.
The management, the players and the fans have all been amazing. I haven't had any abuse. A lot of the fans come up and give me support and say really nice things to me. In fact, there's a few fans have actually become really close friends since it all happened, because they see something in me, and now I'm so much more open and happy.
Sophie spent 15 years as an RAF mechanic working on Tornado jets and also competed as a motocross rider. But the very public transition of figures like the boxing promoter Kelly Maloney and former Olympic athlete Caitlyn Jenner encouraged Sophie the time was right for her too. She now gives motivational talks to help other transgender people.
I want other people to not feel scared. So I'm talking to people about that, about overcoming their fears and actually grasping life, because it's so important. I mean, I didn't choose to be transgender, but I chose not to be a victim.
Malcolm Shaw, ITV News, Brighton.
Indeed, you are watching ITV News here in the Meridian region, and we are delighted you are. Thank you so much for choosing us. Coming up,
it's fantasy football for Eastleigh. It's the furthest they've ever been in the FA Cup, and they're ready to cause another huge upset this weekend.
For all of our stories, head to itv.com/Meridian. Any views or news, call us please, 0808 1010 095. That's the number to ring. Or get in touch via Facebook, or why not send us a tweet at ITV Meridian.
A soldier who died after a punishment exercise known as a bee sting would have survived if he'd received an earlier diagnosis of heat exhaustion. Private Gavin Williams died at Tidworth Barracks on the hottest day of the year in 2006. At the conclusion of the inquest into his death, the coroner criticised the army, saying commissioned officers at all levels should have been aware that such informal punishments were taking place and should have stopped them.
Well, he returned a narrative conclusion after hearing from more than 100 witnesses at Wiltshire and Swindon Coroner's Court in Salisbury. The young recruit had been subjected to an informal session of intense physical exercise known as bee sting to punish him for disobedience and a series of drunken incidents.
What happened to Gavin was wrong, plain and simple. He was killed by the way in which his fellow soldiers chose to punish him unlawfully, to beast him for nothing other than a silly prank. I know that the nature of that beasting was so inhuman, so degrading, that it cannot be tolerated in any civilized world.
We acknowledge that there was a culture of unofficial punishments in 2 Royal Welsh at the time of Gavin's death. This is unacceptable, and it was unacceptable.
Well, it is by far the most controversial section of road ever built. 20 years ago, work on the Newbury bypass got underway when thousands of campaigners battled with bailiffs, security guards and the police.
The scenes were on occasion bloody and violent. The 9-mile bypass is on the A34 between Tot Hill near Highclere in Hampshire and just south of Cheveley Services in Berkshire. Before that, traffic used to come through the town, causing major congestion.
Well, it meant there was, for the very first time, a major through route from the south coast all the way to the Midlands. 7,000 people took part in protests, with 800 arrested for trying to stop the work. The cost was around £100 million, with almost a third of that spent on security measures.
But 20 years on, were the protests worth it? And has the bypass actually worked? Well, our transport correspondent Mike Pearce followed every stage of the protest and now looks back on what they called the third battle of Newbury.
The latest round in the battle of the Newbury bypass. As the long-awaited evictions got underway, police and protesters clashed amid some of the most controversial new road ever built. Protesters took to the trees, built tunnels, and even discovered a rare snail to try to stop construction. But the government was determined, after decades of debate, it would be built. 600 security staff at a cost of £30 million were hired to make it happen. Another £5 million was spent on policing.
Yes, there was a lot of violence, a lot of illegal activity at the start of the project when we were clearing protesters out of the trees. It was a worrying time, but the violence was never going to stop the bypass being built.
Do you think at the end of the day it was worth it?
Yes, very much so. It has removed probably one of the worst bottlenecks on the country's strategic road network.
In the end, it cost £10 million a mile, and today the debate still rages on.
It was meant to cut congestion at peak times. It hasn't done that. It was meant to cut pollution. It hasn't done that. It was meant to cut traffic deaths, and it hasn't done that. So frankly, it hasn't made a big deal of difference.
Oh, it's great. I mean, there's no question Newbury's been transformed. It's a much, much nicer place to live because we don't have all the pollution. And although the bypass was always bound to have some environmental effects, do some environmental damage, there's no question that the benefits of the bypass to the environment hugely outweigh any damage that was done.
On the bypass, it's free-flowing from the south coast heading north. But it did mean 10,000 trees were felled and the bypass cutting through the North Hampshire and Berkshire countryside. While they didn't win the battle, roads campaigners say it did lead to a major rethink of plans for new highways.
It was a big deal. It was a very long, cold winter. I paid tribute to all of the people who came and took part in the protest, who sat in the trees in horrible conditions, a lot of them ending up with a criminal record. But they changed policy, they changed the way that the road direction was going. We have to thank them for that.
Significant benefits. It has diverted a very large amount of traffic that runs north-south on the A34 to the Southampton docks. It has attracted businesses to locate themselves here because we are a significant transport hub.
There's now talk of a second bypass to cope with new housing on the agenda for the town. And the debate over that will be as ferocious as in 1996.
Well, we're joined now by former protester Rebecca Lush, who helped to organise those major protests at the site and in fact was jailed for her part in the campaign against development at Twyford Down. Rebecca Lush, thank you for joining us. A £26 million policing bill for the protests at Newbury, 1,000 arrests, you served time for it. Was it worth it?
Absolutely. I look back and I feel enormous pride at what we achieved then and what we've achieved since, and feel very proud of myself and others taking a stand for what was very important then and still is important now.
The road still went ahead, so what did you achieve?
Well, when the road programme was first launched, there were hundreds, there were over 600 schemes, and by 1997 it was reduced to nothing. And there are numerous places all around the country that have been saved. In the south of England, we have the water meadows of Salisbury, the historic landscape around Stonehenge, and the National Trust's Golden Cap estate in Dorset, all saved because they were threatened by road building that never went ahead.
Will we ever see road protests like this again, do you think?
Well, we are seeing protests against other issues, for instance fracking. There's a huge amount of resistance to fracking all around the country and protest camps, so people are still standing up.
Given the chance, would you do it again?
Not at the moment. I've got young children. I don't think my children would be very impressed, but I feel just as passionately, even more passionately now that I have children, about climate change in particular. We were talking about it then 20 years ago, and it couldn't be even more important now.
Good to talk to you, Rebecca Lush. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, it caused quite a surprise, but new government guidelines on how much alcohol we can safely drink have been issued, which says it's safer to drink nothing at all.
Well, doctors are hoping the new guidelines will drive down rates of cancer, heart disease and diabetes. For many, it's well-timed, of course, as dozens of people try to abstain for dry January.
But as Matt Price reports, it's angered some campaign groups.
For doctors at this surgery, less alcohol means less pressure on a busy NHS. With the new year comes new guidance on how much to drink. And for GP Richard Vautry, he hopes the advice will drive down the diagnosis of life-threatening conditions.
We're seeing more people with obesity, more people with diabetes, people sort of developing cancer, whose main reason for that is alcohol. And I think we need to really tackle the root cause to try and reduce the number of people who are drinking to excess and help them to live a healthier life and a longer life.
The new advice says there's no safe limit and we should all have several alcohol-free days each week. Both men and women now shouldn't have more than 14 units per week. For men, it used to be 21. So the recommended weekly limit now stands at 6 pints of beer or 7 small glasses of wine.
Every year in England, we have 1,000 deaths of intentional self-harm when inebriated, when drunk. And over 800 of those are men. So when you model that and the long-term harms, increased strokes, diabetes and cancer, clearly men need to reduce their drinking if they want to be in the low-risk area.
It might benefit us, but it's not so healthy for the pub trade.
The concept of dry January, the concept of not going to the pub for a month is something that, scares us really. We as a profession would just like people to drink sensibly and responsibly all year round.
One research body, the Institute for Economic Affairs, say the government is scaremongering by failing to point out that alcohol consumption has been falling for a decade. In Brighton, people believe how much we drink should be a personal choice.
I think as a country we probably drink a little bit too much. We could do with all cutting down a little bit.
Living in this country, I know there is a big problem. It's something that people should be very aware of, definitely.
I think it's really good if you can do it, but I don't know if it's possible for some people.
The advice comes out at the end of the first working week after the Christmas holidays. The conversation in this local tonight, no doubt, how much should we really drink? Matt Price, ITV News.
Right, time now for sport, football, FA Cup weekend. 3 words I've never said on air before, Chris Morn. Up the Spitfires!
Will they be taking off?
Yes, they will.
OK, we'll see. Yes, it's a FA Cup third round weekend when the big boys are joined by the teams who've battled through the qualifying rounds. It's certainly the first time non-league Eastleigh have made it this far. They're the lowest ranked club left in the competition. And as Andrew Pate found out, they'd love to cause a huge upset tomorrow.
ITV Meridian Sport Report, sponsored by WeWantAnyCar.com, the Cash for Cars website.
They've never had it so good. 4th in the National League and playing in the third round of the FA Cup for the first time in their 70-year history. Finally putting Eastleigh on the map.
And I say I played for Eastleigh Football Club when I was a player, and they say, where's Eastleigh Football Club? So, you get that, but now we're a force, we're a club that's going forward, trying to achieve something in the Football League if we can one day, and obviously this is a massive bonus to the club by being in the third round. We get the press, we get the people talking about us, we're the only non-league side, and now they know where Eastleigh Football Club is.
Owner Stuart Donald has said he's poured more than £3 million into the club since taking over 4 years ago. And everyone involved is determined this FA Cup run will have a long-lasting effect.
It's been purported as, it's just a rich man's plaything, and when Stuart Donald's finished with it, it won't be able to survive. Well, that's not what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to get something that's sustainable, so whoever becomes the custodians of it when we're, long gone, they're able to compete at that level.
A sellout crowd of more than 5,000 is expected for Bolton's visit tomorrow. The Championship side 3 divisions above Eastleigh, so a lot of people will be hoping for an upset.
They love an underdog. We're the underdog come Saturday, and I hope that everyone can give us, the goodwill gestures of hopefully praying for us to get a result, because that would be extra special for everybody involved.
This match will bring in around £100,000 for the club, and with half-season ticket sales already boosted, this cup run could be the start of even greater things for Eastleigh FC. Andrew Pate, ITV News.
Yes, exciting times for Eastleigh, and less than 5 miles from their ground, Southampton are also at home. It's 40 years now since Saints won the FA Cup on that incredible day when Laurie McMenamin's side defeated Manchester United. The current Saints boss will have Sadio Mane back to face Crystal Palace, and Ronald Koeman has told his players they can't force moves away from the club by behaving badly.
If his behaviour is not good, that makes it more easier for the player, then I put the player on the stands till the end of the contract, because that's, in my opinion, not the way how you have to do your job as a football player.
They've been told. Now, Brighton haven't won in 6 games in the Championship, so their cup trip to Championship rivals Hull provides the manager with an opportunity to make some changes.
From where we are at the moment, I think that's a sensible thing. I think if we were in a position that others are in, where generally they've had a full squad to pick from, but of course we haven't. And the lads around that have fared very, very well. So it is an opportunity, and yes, and sometimes to freshen things up a little bit.
So let's have a look at the third round games. Staying in the Premier League must be Bournemouth's priority, and with a key match against West Ham on Tuesday, Eddie Howe will rotate his team for the trip to Birmingham. Reading, semi-finalists of course last season, are at Huddersfield, while Portsmouth won at Ipswich in the third round in 2008, the season they went on to lift the cup. And Oxford United will have a sellout crowd at the Kassam for their meeting with Premier League Swansea. That match is at noon on Sunday. Away from the Cup, there are a few league matches tomorrow. In League One, Swindon are at home to Southend, while Crawley host Cambridge United in League Two. And finally from me, in rugby, the bottom 2 in the Premiership, London Irish and Newcastle, meet at Reading's Medeski Stadium on Sunday. That's a must-win game for the Irish. That's our sport.
Going to be an exciting weekend, isn't it?
I think so.
Fingers crossed for the Spitfires.
Yeah, good luck,
and all that.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Lovely. Chances are you took your Christmas tree down earlier this week and it's waiting by the bins for the dustman to come along.
Or better still, you're taking it to the recycling centre this weekend.
But hold on, there's something else you could do with that solitary spruce or that forlorn fir. You can eat it. Yes, that's correct. Martin Stew, what a lovely name. We'll explain.
Stuart.
Weeks after the turkey sandwiches and turkey curry, could your tree be the ultimate Christmas leftover? Lauren Davis and Julia Georgalis think so, and have just hosted a dinner party flavoured by fir.
We're both quite into sustainability, and we kind of thought, oh well, if we can use our Christmas trees once Christmas is over, it might be a nice way of giving them a bit of an extra life.
Their menu included spruce cured salmon with spruce pickles, spruce flavoured ice cream, and a cheese course with a spruce jelly.
Does it taste like a pine air freshener? What taste is it?
They actually don't really taste like they smell. Spruce tastes quite almost orangey.
That means it's perfect to make a simple syrup.
The first thing is to cut some of the newer branches off that have the freshest needles on, and then give them a little wash, make sure there's no dirt or insects, and then you just need to cut the needles off as close to the little branch or twig as you can.
Next thing is we slice our lemons. We'll need 1 lemon for every heaped tablespoon of fir needles. You want to add 4 tablespoons of water for every lemon and 2 tablespoons of sugar for every lemon.
Once the solution's boiling, grab your needles and chuck them in the pan to infuse.
While that bubbles away, one word of warning for any budding chefs.
Keep away from yews, that's what we've learned, because they're the really poisonous ones.
How do you tell the difference?
Well, use the way that the needles grow. They kind of grow in a spiral around the branch, and they also have lots of little red berries in the winter.
Spruce, not you flavour, safely infused. It's time to serve.
And then you can enjoy the syrup once it's cooled down with fizzy water or with gin.
Or even over ice cream to spruce up your dessert. Martin Stew, ITV News.
No thanks, but are you pining for a decent weather forecast? Here's Philippa Drew. Philippa, would you eat that?
If it was dipped in chocolate, I could be tempted.
Yeah, you could,
Yeah.
OK. But you've got something better for us, haven't you?
I've got rainbows.
You
They're
got
better than
rainbows.
most things. Yes, yeah. Despite all the rain we've had, there has been an upside. We've had some beautiful rainbows and some beautiful pictures sent in by our viewers. So the first one, taken by Trevor Cridlin in Wheatley in Oxfordshire. A lovely arch there. Yes. The next one, taken by Bill Burton in Rustington in West Sussex. He's 70 and has never seen a rainbow in January, so that's quite something. Next one, Claire Harrington spotted this beauty above Port Solent Marina earlier in the week. And the final one was by Anne Sayers. And if you look closely, you can see it's a double rainbow. That again was in West Sussex.
Is that a double or a reflection?
It's a double rainbow. So what happens is the sun reflects off each raindrop twice, creates a second band. And that band, if you look very closely, has the colours back to front.
And quite rare?
Yes, fairly rare. In fact, Anne did pretty well to catch that. It's quite hard to capture them on camera.
Also rare, some nice cold weather. Any chance?
Yes, I think it's coming next week. Scarves at the ready, I'm afraid.
Scarves at the ready. You don't believe me? Here she is, Philippa Drew.
That's us driving on, us driving off in France, and us outside a chateau.
Driving to Europe. Eurotunnel Le Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
So some fairly unsettled weather on the way for the next few days, which means we could well see some more of these in the sky. Overnight tonight, well, we'll lose any daytime showers away eastwards. Behind it, clearing skies, and under those clear spells, another fairly chilly night on the cards. Temperatures well down into the single figures. Into tomorrow morning then, a cool start, but a bright start for many first thing. However, do make the most of any early sunshine. I think we'll soon start to see thickening cloud and the next band of rain coming in from the west. That rain will push its way steadily eastwards through the afternoon, becoming more showery with time as it does so. And towards the end of the afternoon, I think we'll start to see a little more brightness coming in from the west. Strong winds from the south, but it will still be fairly respectable on the temperature front. Highs tomorrow around 10 or 11 degrees. So we keep the winds from the south and southwest through much of the weekend, really, so staying fairly mild. However, early next week, those winds take a more northwesterly turn, and it's going to start to feel quite a bit cooler as a result. So for the next few days, a mixture of sunshine and showers. Some of the showers on the heavy side, breezy with it as well. And as I said, those temperatures gradually tumbling day by day. Overnight frosts on the cards. Bye-bye for now.
Eurotunnel Le Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
And that's how we look this Friday evening. In just a moment, we have the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Ranveer Singh.
Stacey Poole's got our late news. Do join her if you can. But for now, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thanks for watching. Enjoy your weekend. We're off for a nice supper of Christmas tree.
Happy weekend. Bye.